BEONTV UK, for the community, by the community. www.beontvuk.com.
বার্মিংহামের আশেপাশে কত মার্কেট আছে, ওরিয়েন্টাল সুপার মার্কেট সেরা সবার মাঝে। মাছ মাংস শাক সবজি সব তাজা ভাই, এর লাইগা তো বউয়ের রান্ধনে তো মজাই খায়। ওরিয়েন্টালে বাজার করে এত শান্তি পাই, হাকালুকি হাওড়ের মতো কারপার কাছে ভাই।
Oriental Halal Store, Coventry Road, Small Heath, Birmingham.
আপনি কি আপনার রেস্টুরেন্টের জন্য কমার্শিয়াল কুকার, তন্দুরি, হট প্লেট, ওভেন এবং ক্যানোপির বিশ্বস্ত প্রতিষ্ঠান খুঁজছেন? আপনি কি এই সকল সামগ্রী ইউকে স্ট্যান্ডার্ড সার্ভিস সার্টিফিকেট সিই সহ চান? তাহলে আর ভাবনা নেই। সুদীর্ঘ 20 বছর স্পেন, ইটালি এবং বাংলাদেশে সুনামের সাথে ব্যবসা করার পর এখন বার্মিংহামে খোলা হলো আমাদের শোরুম এবং ফ্যাক্টরি।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। একটা ভালো রেস্টুরেন্ট এবং একটা ভালো ব্যবসার জন্য একটা ভালো কুকারের প্রয়োজন হয়। আলহামদুলিল্লাহ আমি অনেকদিন খোঁজাখুঁজির পর বার্মিংহাম কমার্শিয়াল কুকার যারা সিই অ্যাপ্রুভ তাদের কাছ থেকে আমি একটা কুকার কিনেছিলাম। কুকারটা অত্যন্ত ভালো এবং খুবই ভালো সার্ভিস দিচ্ছে এবং তাদের ব্যবসা প্রতিষ্ঠানের সার্ভিসটাও খুবই ভালো। আমি হ্যাপি এবং আমার কিচেনের স্টাফরাও হ্যাপি।
Birmingham Commercial Cooker Limited, Unit 69, Sydenham Road, B111BG, Birmingham. Phone number 0795 297 8136.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to my show Wholehearted Living. I'm your host Aamilah, and the show that brings you stories about courage, compassion and connection. You are tuned into BEONTV, and if you're not already following us on our social media platforms, get following BEONTV UK, and you can find us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube. So today I bring to you a very inspirational woman by the name of Nazma Meah. Assalamu alaikum, Nazma.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you for coming on my show today.
Thank you for having me, Aamilah. I'm absolutely excited, really, to be here.
Good, and I'm really looking forward to interviewing you. We've only met once, actually, properly, but we've conversed and had conversations online. And Nazma, I'm going to go through the journey of being a mompreneur. So for those of you who don't know what a mompreneur is, it's a mother who's also an entrepreneur, and she's got an amazing journey and story to share with us. So let's start off with an introduction. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, Aamilah, basically, my name's Nazma. I think the most important thing I always tell everybody is I'm a mother of 5 children.
MashaAllah.
My oldest is 23 and my youngest is 9, and they range in between. Most of what I'm doing now, or my life journey, has stemmed from my children and what I want to their future. So that's probably the most important thing for me. Second is I'm a businesswoman. I run several nurseries, and I am active in the community. But I suppose my story here is about how I'm going to take that forward. So in a nutshell, that's me.
Okay, so what I'm going to be talking, just so that our viewers are aware, I'm going to go through the journey of with Nazma about the mum. Like I'm just, every time you say you're a mother of 5 and your eldest is 23,
Yep.
youngest is 9, I'm just like, wow. And you've achieved so much whilst being a mother, and just listening to you, the dedication and commitment that you have to your children. And then we're going to go on to her journey as an entrepreneur, and then her journey into politics and her the work that she does as SuperNaz, the Socialist. So please stay tuned and do watch the whole show so we can really get to know and learn more about Nazma. So let's talk about your life as a mum, because you're a resident in Birmingham, but you weren't originally from Birmingham. So let's talk about your life and how you got into Birmingham, and then your life as a mum, how it's been, because it can't have been easy. Five grown children and young children as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to try and sort of like really condense this, otherwise we'll be here for hours or days or months even. So let's just say, so my parents were like most probably Bangladeshis. My dad was a restaurant worker in the 70s. I was born in Bangladesh, me and my brother. My dad brought my mum and both of us over in the late 70s. We used to live in Hammersmith. My dad had a restaurant there, typical, restaurant owner. And then in 1986, my dad decided, we used to live in a flat and he wanted us to have a garden, he wanted us to have a house, and my dad's very wanted us to have a good education, so we moved to Bedford near Luton, a small town near Luton. I grew up there, so my education, I went to Catholic schools, I went to Church of England schools, so my education is very varied, and that really helped me later in life as well. So we'll sort of touch on that, how that's helped me. So my education sort of happened there. And historically, my work life is banking. I used to work for the old Abbey National, that's now Santander. So business and finance is where always I've been. I then got married and I had 2 little boys. And unfortunately, my marriage broke down. And if we're looking early 2000s, late 90s, very taboo at that time. It still is now for our community.
It is.
It still is now. But so it sort of made me, I think that's what made me a stronger person, because I had my 2 little boys and I wanted to make sure they had the best. So I never stopped working. I worked, they were put in childcare. And then as life directs you, I met my current husband, who's, and this is where my life starts getting a whole lot better, because I met this man who supported in my so whatever I am now is because of the support of my husband, and that's why 5 children, it sounds a lot, but for me, having that support, it was a breeze, really. So then we moved to Birmingham for various reasons, and moving to Birmingham is probably where my life changed, because obviously Birmingham being a city and Bedford being a small town, the opportunities are so much more. So I moved to Birmingham, and at that time I was working in finance. I was an accounts assistant, and I sort of accidentally fell into childcare via some consultancy I did for a local school. And it was the nursery. They needed business planning. The nursery was in deficit, and it's sort of like my financial skills then supported that. When I went into the nursery, the thing that shocked me was how children from BMA communities never really caught up. And when we were doing like assessments or teachers were talking about it, it was almost like they're improving, but they're never catching up. And in my head, I'm thinking, these children are born speaking 2 languages, maybe 3. How can they not catch up? What's going on? So then I decided that I'd open my own nursery. So this is where my journey starts into nurseries. Because I thought, it's something in the early years. It's those first few years that are important. So I then did my level 3 childcare. And in 2010 I opened my first nursery, which is still running at St James's Church at my preschool. And our ethos is, we take children 2 to 5, and our ethos is developing those children. But over the years, what's happened is we're actually developing the family. A child's not on their own; they come with the family. So that's how I stepped into childcare, and it's really funny because my family, I've got 5 children. They never thought that I'd have that many, but then having hundreds, being responsible, it's almost like childcare and children were not me at all, but my life's taken me that way. And then I think that's where it started about fairness and every child matters and equality. It started in the early years, and that's where then from there I my first child was I opened my nursery in 2010 April, and actually I had my 4th daughter in the June.
Yeah, 2 months later.
2 months later, so I was pregnant doing all this. And then I had my son, my 5th son in 2012, and I started my degree then as well. So I did my degree quite late. I was 37 when I did my degree. So it's almost like I think in my head sometimes I need to be extra busy. There's nothing simple. It needs to be, but there's always a reason for things happening. So the reason I did my degree was because in early years you have to move with the times. You have to move with, if you're going to be teaching children, developing them, managing staff, you need to know what you're talking about. So that's why I felt the need that I need to do my early years degree. And then I went on and qualified as an early years teacher. So my learning, I love learning, and I think I'm a big advocate of that. So, continuous professional development. I encourage my staff, I encourage anybody around me. Reading books is part of me. So that's my journey. And then at one point I had 5 preschools. So we sort of opened one from another to another. And then when COVID hit, I had to take a step back. And actually before COVID, what happened was I actually felt quite ill. One day, suddenly I had a really bad pain in my leg. And after lots and lots of, investigations, it turned out I had a slip disc. So my disc was pressing on a nerve in my spine that was giving me pain. 6 months I struggled, and then it stopped. It just disappeared. So I thought it was okay. But 6 months down the line, I had to go in for emergency back surgery. Otherwise, I would have ended up paralysed because the disc was going to cover my spinal cord. So having that done, that sort of brought a lot of things home as well. So I started reducing a lot of things, and then COVID hit, and COVID really did bring a lot of things home. So I started reducing. So currently now I have one business that is mine and one where I consult at, because it's very close to my heart. And the rest of the time the balance has gone from finances to community and socialist. So this is how the balance.
So we're going to come on to talk about that. So what I'm hearing you in the last part of what you said is you've had to make compromises, because whilst on this amazing and tremendous journey that you've been on, there's other inspirations and aspirations that you've got which are not necessarily related to financial. It's more about the giving the back bit now and really doing something in the community. And some things have had to give in order to make space and way for these other things, these other ambitions and aspirations that you have. I just want to go back, because you talked about your husband, and it's really beautiful to hear that. And what I hear from you, what I'm getting from you, is the partnership.
Oh yeah.
And on your journey as a mompreneur, that played a very important.
Huge.
Important
I mean,
role.
everyone knows the saying, behind every successful man there's a woman, but behind every successful woman there's a man also, because for me, if I didn't have my husband, I wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff, because we all know when you've got children, childcare is the biggest issue, whether it's financial or whether it's just care. There were times where I would go off to meetings and he would look after the children, or I'd be in a meeting and he would go and collect the children, or I'd be really busy and he'd cook. So I think what especially in our community, I think what people need to understand is husband and wife is a partnership in all aspects, and I think we forget that sometimes. So whether it's financial, whether it's spiritual, whether it's mental, whether it's physical, you're equal partners. And once that is established, then any woman can do anything that she wants, because you've got that support there. I mean, I work a lot with single women. I mean, I was one myself, and it's tough. It's tough. Not to say that you can't make it. Of course you can make it. There's lots of single women doing fantastic things, and I applaud them. But in my journey, and like I said, I had my children as well, and my family was my children and my husband. I didn't have extended family. Like I said, my parents and everybody are in Bedford. Didn't have family here. And it's really important that between you, you talk about how you're going to do things. You speak about it. So what's the future? How are we going to do this? What's the outcomes? What is it we want? And we both have to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page, it won't work. And sometimes you have to compromise. Oh gosh, there's lots of compromises that happen there. Sometimes you have lots of arguments, huge arguments. But if you're on the same page and the goal is the same, you will get there. And it's not easy.
So it's the communication that's key, and knowing, what you both want from life together, what you both want for your family, what your shared ambitions and aspirations are, what your individual ambitions and aspirations are as well, and how you can complement and support each other to achieve those things. And I love that, because a lot of the time, you know, you see these memes and posts and etc. on social media about, like, when a father is looking after his children, he's not doing anything phenomenal. Like, there's not a wow factor, because he's looking after his children, and he's doing that to support the woman, you know, the mother of his children, so that she can have the time and space that she needs to go and do what she's doing. And I think, you know, that's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. The other thing about the nursery, because you saw an opportunity and you took that opportunity, and often, you know, we have opportunities that come our way, and a lot of the time we're afraid to take opportunities because it's the fear of the unknown. So talk to us a little bit about, like, how you just took that it would take a leap of faith to go in and do something in an area you don't, you know, you're not a childcare background, you had a finance background, so it's something completely different to what you kind of, like, you knew your comfort zone. So talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really weird, because when when I was at school, we had two pathways. So you had the business people and you had the childcare, health and social care people, and I was 1,000 miles away from that. I was business, I was very focused sort of thing. So when I look back now and I laugh, so when I went in to do this consultancy for this school, business planning, it was the children and their life, you know, their future life aspirations, and it didn't sit well with me. I thought, no, something's wrong. These children are clever because, like I said, they're born speaking 2 languages, they're articulate, they're, you know, what is it? Why is it they can't catch up with their peers? You know, what's going on? You know, is it the English language? Is it parents? Is it what is it? And it was those children that I thought, these are the future, and if we don't do something about them, you're going to have a whole generation of children growing up always behind, and it didn't sit well with me. So it was almost like, no, there's something we can do. And it was hard, because it wasn't only just doing a qualification in childcare, it was also setting up a business. Now that's a huge financial risk. It's a time risk as well. So, you know, between me and my husband, you know, it was like, you know, I'm going to be spending an awful lot. It was going through the Ofsted process. It was hiring staff. So this was my first business. I had a little bit of business acumen because my dad had a restaurant. He had restaurants, so I knew some business. Business and finance training helped me, but, you know, managing staff, but it was that draw of those children that gave me that leap of faith, because it was like, these children need me, or need someone like me. And
you weren't just taking the opportunity for yourself, but you were taking that opportunity to create opportunities for children from the BAME community, so the black and minority ethnic community, and to try and, you know, when we talk about every child matters, and this is probably going off a bit of tangent, but every child can only matter if the space that they're in provides them with equal opportunities.
Yeah, equality and equity, both of those. You know, and like I said, and one of the things about me, and you will get to know me, is when I get a bee in my bonnet, I've got a bee in my bonnet. It just doesn't sit well with me. And it wasn't it wasn't a business that you could go in and make a lot of money in, because the majority of the children I have were funded children. That was the whole point, that these were children that qualified for free funded nursery. You know, we live in a deprived area. You know, a lot of things are against us. So it was almost like, it wasn't a business decision. It really was a social decision. But it ended up being a business, because that's the only way I could do this. And like I said, 2010, and I've never looked back. And I don't think I will look back, because every child that comes to me now is, I mean, some of the children that I've had first were like 11 and 12 years old. These children are now, they've done their SATs, they're going on to year 7. That's like, wow, you know, sort of thing. And I would hope that whatever we taught them in the early years has really helped them progress. And I've had some parents come back and say, you know, my child's going to grammar school. I mean, and it's not me, obviously, but I always feel that foundation somewhere, you know, we've built something. But also for me, it was about the family as well, because a lot of our community are scared of the educational system. So one of the things that we do as well, we teach them about schools, we teach them about quick questioning schools, looking at assessments, looking at your reports, going to parents' evening, asking those questions about your children, behaviour, special needs. I mean, one of my biggest gripes is special educational needs, because in our community, they still don't understand it, but they still don't have the support. 'Cause sometimes the terminology even confuses me. I don't understand it half the time. And then we've got parents like these children. We are sometimes the first port of call for a parent that's just been told their child's got an additional need, and that's devastating, you know. And you know, recently, autism has been on the up. But in our communities, autism hasn't been explained.
Yeah, it hasn't been explained, and therefore it's not understood. And we've done a show on autism, so you can actually go on the BEONTV UK YouTube channel and look in the playlist of Wholehearted Living, and you'll find the show there on autism. And our guest that was on there, Sabah,
Yeah.
I believe she's going to be doing some work with yourself.
Absolutely,
And that's,
yeah.
this is what the Wholehearted Living show is about, and creating those connections and through sharing stories. Because if we don't do that here in this space, how do we know what other people bring to the table?
Well, I saw
in the
that show and I
community?
saw Sabah, and I was like, my goodness, we need this woman. We need this woman in the community to come out and speak to parents, that because she's got autistic children, to come out and say there's nothing wrong with that. That, you know, you don't have to worry, or you don't have to panic. You don't have to do anything. These children are children. So when I saw that show, I was like, I'm so excited, because we're going to be working with Sabah and trying to bring knowledge and understanding and awareness into the community.
And that's how we connected.
Yes.
Because you saw the show, and we didn't realize. Well, we were on a Twitter group that's set up for Bangladeshis, and we're on this group. And I've never met you, and you reached out to me and said, right, I need to connect with Sabah after you saw the show that we did. And so, and then through that, we're here now doing another show. And that's what's beautiful about Wholehearted Living. It's not just a show, but the actual concept of Wholehearted Living is about the courage, the compassion, and the connection. You talked about building the foundation and working with, you know, disadvantaged and marginalised communities, and through that, there must be other work that you do, like the added value that you bring to the community, with regards to the families that you work with, the mums that you work with, the dads that you work with. So let's talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. I mean, it was huge because, you know, like I said, it's never about the child, it's about the family, because the family makes up the child. You know, if you look, you've got the child, but the child's environment, how the child's growing up. And another aspect of my sort of life is my staff as well. Because one of the things that I did was I recruited women that would never have probably gone into a job. So because of the way we nurture them, and family friendly timings, because, you know, women have children, so school hours, local work where they could come in. Some people didn't have confidence, you know, some people, this was their first ever job. So as well as families, it was that recruitment aspect as well, and being that sort of employer that they could trust and come to. So through that, like I said, through my families, a lot of the, you know, we ended up being a sort of unofficial children's centre, because as services diminished, as we know, which Sure Start, everything started diminishing, charity started diminishing, all these community things that were around. In 2010, there was a lot around, but then as the years sort of went on and government cut funding, everything started diminishing.
And then the children's centres went over to, like, Bernardo's. They were no longer under, not Bernardo's, but they got commissioned out to services like Bernardo's and other organisations. And then as a result, we saw the city council cuts, and children's centres for, you know, the early years, the very, very early years of a child's life, those services and provisions were being cut. Yeah.
But as the nursery, we had those children, we couldn't stop supporting our families. So if a child needed something, we would have to try and go and find it. So like I said, that's with the special educational needs. You know, we start off with, we identify needs, then we need to go and get our area Senko, we need to find the community paediatrician, the health visitors, doctors. We had to do all that multi-agency work because there was no one else there, and we can't let that child go, and we can't let that parent go. So we ended up being the sort of unofficial children's centre and trying to work with whatever services were around. I mean, they were skeleton services, but there were some around. And then we did the normal, filling in housing benefit forms, you know, phoning up about a council tax bill, or a parent's child benefit stopped or something. we ended up being those people because there was actually no one around. So like advice centres closed down, parents didn't know where to go, citizen advice is all the way in city centre. So it was almost like because that child came to us and that family, we built that relationship with them, and they trusted us. We even had several domestic violence cases where the mum left the home, came to nursery, and we actually called the police, and they were able to go, Dad came after, where's my wife? And we were like, well, we don't know. So things. So under it's almost like a haven it became, and that's what we pride ourselves on, is the trust and the relationship we make with our families, because so much is going on in households at the moment. It's even more now since COVID, but even previously it was there's so much going on, and it did shock me. The first time it happened, it shocked me, because I was like, how can you leave? How can you leave your family? What do I do? Type thing. But then I realised, you know what? This is the only place they know what to do.
And from the work that you've done, no doubt you would have developed a really strong relationship of trust and connection and reliability with the families that you were working with, the children and families that they came from, and that would have built in like the prelude into where you wanted to then go and do the community work, the socialist side of the work, the politics side of the work that you wanted to do, because you saw so much at a grassroots level, and that kind of like created passion in you to want to go and do something.
Yeah, the politics accidentally happened because what I didn't realise is that, well, apparently I've always been a socialist. I've always been that person.
I'm going to hold you there because we are going to go for a break, and after the break I want to talk about the socialist and the politics journey, even though you stumbled on it by accident.
Yeah.
Sounds like it was a very good accident that happened. So do stay tuned with us. We're going to go for a short break and then we'll be back. You're tuned into Wholehearted Living with Aamilah, and I'm in conversation with Nazma Meah, who is an amazing, amazing, inspirational mompreneur. Stay tuned and we'll be back after a short break. Thank you.
BEONTV UK, for the community, by the community. www.beontvuk.com.
Are you looking for a new job? Want to develop new skills or gain some valuable experience and have lots of fun doing it? The Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games is looking to recruit a variety of roles, including catering, cleaning, stewarding and security. With roles from 3 weeks to 3 months, make Birmingham 2022 work for you. Register now to be part of the largest sporting and cultural event ever to take place in the West Midlands. Visit birmingham2022.com/jobs.
বার্মিংহামের আশেপাশে কত মার্কেট আছে, ওরিয়েন্টাল সুপার মার্কেট সেরা সবার মাঝে। মাছ মাংস শাক সবজি সব তাজা ভাই, এর লাইগা তো বউয়ের রান্ধনে তো মজাই খায়। ওরিয়েন্টালে বাজার করে এত শান্তি পাই, হাকালুকি হাওড়ের মতো কারপার কাছে ভাই।
Oriental HALAL store, Coventry Road, Small Heath, Birmingham.
আপনি কি আপনার রেস্টুরেন্টের জন্য কমার্শিয়াল কুকার, তন্দুরি, হট প্লেট, ওভেন এবং ক্যানোপির বিশ্বস্ত প্রতিষ্ঠান খুঁজছেন? আপনি কি এই সকল সামগ্রী ইউকে স্ট্যান্ডার্ড সার্ভিস সার্টিফিকেট CE সহ চান? তাহলে আর ভাবনা নেই। সুদীর্ঘ 20 বছর স্পেন, ইটালি এবং বাংলাদেশে সুনামের সাথে ব্যবসা করার পর এখন বার্মিংহামে খোলা হলো আমাদের শোরুম এবং ফ্যাক্টরি।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। একটা ভালো রেস্টুরেন্ট এবং একটা ভালো ব্যবসার জন্য একটা ভালো কুকারের প্রয়োজন হয়। আলহামদুলিল্লাহ আমি অনেকদিন খোঁজাখুঁজির পর বার্মিংহাম কমার্শিয়াল কুকার, যারা CE অ্যাপ্রুভ, তাদের কাছ থেকে আমি একটা কুকার কিনেছিলাম। কুকারটা অত্যন্ত ভালো এবং খুবই ভালো সার্ভিস দিচ্ছে এবং তাদের ব্যবসা প্রতিষ্ঠানের সার্ভিসটাও খুবই ভালো। আমি হ্যাপি এবং আমার কিচেনের স্টাফটাও হ্যাপি।
Birmingham Commercial Cooker Limited, Unit 69, Sydenham Road, B111DG, Birmingham. Phone number 0795 297 8136.
বার্মিংহামের আশেপাশে কত মার্কেট আছে, ওরিয়েন্টাল সুপার মার্কেট সেরা সবার মাঝে। মাছ মাংস শাক সবজি সব তাজা ভাই, এর লাইগা তো বউয়ের রান্ধনে তো মজায় খায়। ওরিয়েন্টালে বাজার করে এত শান্তি পাই, হাকালুকি হাওড়ের মতো কারপার কাছে ভাই।
Oriental Halal Store, Coventry Road, Small Heath, Birmingham.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. This is the Wholehearted Living Show on BEONTV UK. I'm your host Aamilah. I'm joined and in conversation with Nazma and Meah, and we are going through her incredibly inspiring MumPreneur journey. So Nazma described herself as just an ordinary woman, and I'm going to go on expand on that and say, like, and she described herself as this actually off air, so you wouldn't have heard it on the show. But I'm going to go and extend on that and expand on that and say that you're an ordinary woman doing extraordinary things. And there's a lot of these ordinary women in our communities that are doing extraordinary things. And you're just like the girl next door, you know, but you're doing some amazing work. You really are. And I want to just talk, because we just before the break, we were talking about just starting to get into your work, into like the socialist work and the politics. But you said something really interesting, which was that when you look back now, you were always a socialist. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I suppose if you think about why I went into childcare, it was about fairness, equality, trying to give everybody the same start in life. So that's what a socialist is about. It's about, you know, looking at, you know, the vulnerable, the people that maybe can't do the things that you can do. I mean, I always say one of my biggest privileges is that I can speak English and I understand English and I can navigate the systems. And that privilege for me is what I share. So for me, it's about supporting all those vulnerable people out there that don't have the same privilege as me, because of that, they're not getting they're owed, or they're not getting the best of what they need. So it sort of stemmed from that, and I don't know if it stemmed from my education though, Aamilah, because like I mentioned before, I went to a Church of England school and I went to a Catholic upper school. And it was very much about love thy neighbour. The education was about unity. I was the only brown person in my school. I mean, my school was full of Italians, you know, because Bedford's a heavy Italian population. Italians, but I never felt out of place, and I never felt that religion was a barrier. So even when I used to have my Eid, I mean, I used to have because it's not a Muslim school. I used to have an unauthorised day off. It was never held against me. My friends never questioned it. And that taught me about religion and unity. So as I grew up, you know, Catholicism never frightened me. Churches never frightened me. Vicars never frightened me. You know, the unknown, because sometimes I think the unknown frightens people. Yeah. And having had that, I mean, I read the New Testament, I read the Old Testament. I mean, I used to go to church and just sit there. I didn't obviously go up for communion, but I used to sit there and gather my thoughts and look at the lovely stained glass windows, and all that has helped me several years later when I'm dealing with people, when I'm trying to community cohesiveness because and being in the church. My preschool's actually in a church, and it's in a very well-known church in Aston, because there used to be an advice centre there. So everybody knows this because they used to go to the advice centre. So and they did have a nursery before, but when I opened my preschool, I did have some barriers sometimes. I had some people not wanting to come in because it was a church, or they thought it would affect their children. But the majority, I managed to, it's almost like interlink and say, you know what, religion's not a barrier. We're all the same, and we all have the same beliefs. But more than religion beliefs, it's a human belief. So, you know, looking after each other, respect, loving each other, supporting each other, and things like that. So it's almost like my education helped me become a socialist without me realising. So for me, helping someone is more important than any financial benefit. So if I can help someone sort out their housing benefit, or I can support someone and stop them being evicted, I feel I've done my job. And that's from back when I used to take my parents, into appointments because they couldn't speak English, and most of us probably in this generation, we did that.
Yeah, our generation would probably be like, we did a lot of interpreting.
Yeah.
It was almost like probably our first job.
It was our first job. And sometimes we were pulled out of school for it because of the appointments. Yeah. And I think from there where it stemmed of supporting and helping our own. And for me, like I said, I hate injustice. If I see something not right, or I see somebody being taken advantage of, it annoys me, because I'm like, well, why? And
I suppose what I'm hearing you say is that one of the things your passion as a socialist is about restoring justice, and creating a balanced level field for everybody, because everybody deserves an opportunity. And if there are going to be some people having a head start, but what is it that you're looking at? What is it that I can do, those who have been left behind, to help them accelerate and catch up, so they're on a level playing field as much as possible? And we can't change everything. We can't change the lives of everybody, but we can only do the bit that is in our lot and that is assigned to us.
Absolutely.
And what was assigned to you was the people that you had access and reached through the nursery and through the work that you were doing. So let's talk about how politics came into the fold.
Like I said, I've always supported. I've apparently been a socialist. The vulnerable, the underdog, and everything like that. And then it was COVID actually, and I was sitting there. I've never really been any part of politics, but obviously I've never been Tory. Labour was sort of the thing that I was looking at, and I supported our local MP. She's been quite supportive of me. She's been to our nursery and things like that. So I was doing some envelope stuffing for her, because Commonwealth Games are coming, aren't they? So I was sitting there watching TV, and I don't know if PMQ was on or something was happening with government, and I was looking at these people talking about policies and strategies. I was thinking, oh my goodness me, I could do better than that. What are they talking about? Does it make sense? I thought bright and clever people were meant to be in government. What are these lot talking about? And then in my head I started thinking, okay, maybe I need to look at local councillor. That's where it started from. If I want to make the change, I need to be the change. I need to be there to do it. It's not sitting on the sidelines.
So just to interrupt there, like, to be able to be a change maker, you wanted to be in a position where you can not only influence the decision but also be part of the decision making, and that's one of the things that fired inside of you, I suppose. Yeah, I thought,
what, it's no point me sitting on the side and saying, oh, why are you doing this, or why are you doing that, or complaining, because for me complaining is not an option, because complaining, it's negative, but it never achieves anything. So I thought, I was sitting there and I was thinking, so maybe I could be the change. I said, start on a local level, I said. So that's when I thought, I'm going to become a councillor, and I applied and I got chosen to become a Labour councillor. This was September 21.
Okay.
And I was waiting for an area to be allocated to me. But then I think things happen, and at the moment, my political view changed. Probably what I wanted from a political party isn't what Labour could offer me. And for me now, I look at what for my children, I look about the next generation, because one of the things that's really happened is over the last 12 years, the youth have been let down so much. So if you think of it, if somebody's 24 years old now, 12 years of their life they've lived in austerity. They're paying huge university fees. They're not able to afford a house. They can't afford insurance. These young people are growing up with actually no bright future, unless obviously you're from the elite or you're rich, or you've got those things for you. But a normal person, and then you've got
going back to the ordinary
person. Yeah. And I thought, what, we need to be the change so we can be there to support these people. And I was looking around, and you know, I wasn't happy with what Labour were offering, and I found this new party. As you know, I stood as a councillor through the Breakthrough Party, which is very focused on the next generation. It's not a youth-led party; it's a youth-focused party. Obviously, not to say that they're not focused on older people, but the policies that we fight for are about the next generation. So we're fighting for housing. We're fighting for minimum wage to be an acceptable wage. We're fighting for services to be back into national ownership because of the way capitalism has happened, and none of us have got any money. We're talking about no gig economy and no 0-hour contracts, proper jobs for proper people. So, and I've got children of my own. So again, it came to me like my child, I bought my first house when I was 21, 22. My child will never be able to do that. You know, getting a deposit of £30,000-40,000. How are you meant to do that? You know, all these questions, and it's happening in my household. So obviously it's happening across the country. So that's where I decided, and that's how I came into politics. Wanted to change from the grassroots and influence. And that's how I ended up, you know, running for councillor, because I thought, you know what, if you're in positions like that, you can influence change. You know, they do say, you know, obviously, you know, signing petitions, complaining, you know, writing off to your MP and things like that. Yeah, you can still continue doing that, but if you're a decision maker, you can change a lot.
Yeah. Change comes in many forms, and like you said, even something like a petition can influence change. Being in organisations that champion for change, you can influence change. But one of the things that you wanted to do was be in there as part of the decision makers that sit around the table, or you know, who are actually making the decision about change. And I think it's an absolutely phenomenal thing that you've done, like, and especially coming forward as a Bangladeshi woman, because we're so underrepresented. We are like so underrepresented Bangladeshi women in politics here in Birmingham. And so, you know, hats off to you and applaud to you for braving it and doing that and really bringing it forward. And it was really nice to see actually this year during the local elections across Birmingham and Sandwell, and I think Solihull as well, more Bangladeshi women coming into the fold of politics. I don't know what their, you know, ambitions, aspirations, intentions were, but it was just good to see that representation. Now talk to me about, because in politics and being a socialist, there has to be a connection with the community. So talk to me about your connection with community and your passion for community.
Yeah, so obviously I've lived in Aston for 16 years, and I've had my business for 12 years. So through that, my staff, my families, my children go to school in the area, I live in the area. Community sort of organically happened. But one of the things that happened was I was quite insular in my community work, so it was quite limited to my families, my children. I'm a great believer of also, if people, organisations of people are doing things, do not go up and set another one and try and, you know, divide it sort of thing. If there's an organisation doing good work, go and support it. If there's somebody doing good work, go and support. Do not decide, oh, well, I'm going to do this and sort of divide things up, because I think that doesn't do justice for the community. So there were organisations doing things. Aston Pride was around when I started when I came to live in Aston. So they were doing things, so I would go and support them. I'd be on a couple of the boards, and then we had like little community groups. But at the same time, I had my own children, I had my own house, I had my own sort of targets, I had my business. So I was doing my community work, but I was quite insular. When I decided to stand for councillor, it meant putting myself out there, and that was one of the biggest debates I had with myself. You know, I never used to talk to myself in the sense of, you know, sort of like weigh pros and cons, because I was very much, I'm going to do it and that's going to be it. But this I had to seriously think about, because it wasn't just affecting me, it'll be about my family, it'll be about my children, you know, it's a wider sort of spectrum.
You become quite vulnerable because you're in the eyes of the public and everybody can see you now.
Yeah, and it was about thinking about, do I want to do this? You know, why should I do this? And do I need to do this? You know, I'm quite comfortable where I am, you know, everything's going hunky-dory. But then again, it came back to, remember I said that bee in my bonnet? I was like, yes, but it's all going wrong. You know, people are suffering. Something's not right, and I'm not saying that I could sort everything. You know, and I'm not the answer to it. But we all need to start somewhere, and you know, if it starts with me, with the first step, you know, then others join me, then it means that, you know, I've done something. So, you know, obviously I had the conversation with my husband, that was the most important, about how this would affect, and then my children. And I have to mention my daughter, Nafisa, because she has been literally my beacon when I started my journey on politics. My daughter's 15 years old, she'll be 16 in August, and she's just going through her GCSEs, but she's the one, she's also my social media manager, because you know what, I mean, I'm absolutely rubbish at social media, but she knows, so she's the one that set up my TikTok, she's the one that manages my Facebook and things like that. So it was a decision I had to make, because it wasn't about me, it was about the family, and putting yourself out there. And you know, most of the time, you know, people think I'm quite courageous, I'm quite sort of, you know, I don't really care what people think about me, but this was really putting myself out there, because I would be talking to people that could say
and
anything
that's,
to
you know,
me.
there's this perceived courageousness where we look at somebody who comes across as confident and somebody who's achieved lots, and we look at that and we often think, oh, that's courage. Yes, it is courage, but the other side of the coin of courage is vulnerability. When you can be vulnerable and then step out there and be vulnerable, that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, it did. So, and I did a coaching course with it's a women's group called WOW, and I have to say hi to Isa, because one of the things that we talked about was courage and vulnerability as well, and that helped me as well, the coaching that I did, because I don't think in the Asian community we've clocked onto how beneficial coaching can be.
Oh yeah.
You know,
as a trainee counsellor, somebody who's training to become a counsellor and therapist, it's so important. Like,
and I don't think we've clocked on to actually how it can change you. So I did this coaching course about a year before, with fantastic women, and I did it with women of the world. So there were people from Philippines, Japan, you know, Africa.
I've heard of this one.
Yeah, so it was like us. We're all women, but obviously we're living in different countries, but we're also different cultures, different religion. But we've all got the same issue. We've all got the same problems, and it was absolutely wonderful. And one of the things was courage and vulnerability. So when I was deciding of whether to stand, because it was almost like, well, you know, what if somebody's horrible to you? What if they say something nasty to you, and you've got to go and knock on doors? You've never done that in your life. You know, you've never put yourself out there. So I was having these conversations with myself, and you know, well, what's the worst thing that could happen? And I have to say, I knocked probably 90% of Aston's doors, and nobody was nasty
and that's
to
hard.
me.
That's a lot. I mean, if you know the size of Aston.
Yeah.
That's
and
a
it
lot
was
of
Ramadan
doors.
as well.
Oh, in the month of Ramadan.
In the month of Ramadan.
That's an achievement.
Yeah,
Well done.
and it was, nobody was ever nasty to me, and that's what I think every day, that's what made me even more conscious that I've made the right decision, because yeah, I didn't win, but the connection I had with people, and the way people were actually nice to me, you know, they could have quite easily been horrible to me. You know, people are people, aren't they? They could say, you know, there could be times that at the door they're slamming doors in my face or something. Nobody ever did, and that's when I thought, you know what, I've made the right decision, because for whatever it is I'm saying to people, they're not getting angry at me. They're not, you know, and the good thing about me was I didn't come with any baggage, so I wasn't from any of the political parties that were making a mess of things. I was a new, fresh party. It was a bit difficult because they didn't know the party, but it was me. Some people knew of me, some people didn't. But it restored that decision I made about putting myself out there. And I say to women and people that I speak to all the time, you know what, it is about taking that. You know, you do have to do that to get to the next step. So I've done my first, where I've put myself out there. And, you know, some people used to say to me, oh, isn't it embarrassing if you don't win? And I sat there and I said, well, no, because someone's got to win and someone's got to lose. Yeah. You know, and in Aston, where historically it's a very strong Labour hold, and then you've got Lib Dem hold, I said, if I won, that would be the biggest miracle, I think, you know, in history. But if I can make my mark and start the process of people knowing who I am, what my party's about, then that's a win for me. And I think I did. You know, out of all the parties, you know, I beat the Conservatives. You know,
congratulations.
They are a known party. You know, the numbers may not be huge, but you know, after Lib Dem and Labour, I came third, and then we had another 3 other parties. So it's almost like, and it's things like that when I look at my, you know, the winning wasn't the important bit.
It's really beautiful what you said, because for you the win was a different definition.
Oh yes,
it was a very individual definition to yourself, and you knew what you were going into. You knew the reality of it, but you also knew your intentions and you remained true to your
Yeah.
intentions.
Yeah, and I had to. And there were some times in Ramadan I didn't want to go out canvassing. I'd be sitting there and I was thinking, I'm tired, or I'm sort of thing, or maybe we shouldn't do this. And my daughter, bless her heart, said, come on, Mum, we need to do this. We'll do 2 hours today. Let's go out. Once I got out, it was brilliant, because as soon as you had a couple of positive comments at the door, it's almost like they charge your fire up, you know, when you've got the fire in your belly. And it is a struggle. And I think what people don't understand, community work, councillors, MPs, political work, it's a struggle, because you're almost like saying to people, we want to help you, let us help you. And some people don't want you to help them. And you're like, well, why don't you want our help? And it's quite draining, because you're almost sitting, sometimes I was walking along and thinking, I'm trying to help these people, but they don't want my help, you know, type thing. So it's not easy. But again, it comes back to Meah, intention. Why are we doing this? What's the purpose of it? And where we want to go from it. And for me, it's like I say, Aamilah, for me, I've got a privilege, and I need to share that privilege out, because many people don't have that privilege. You know, I was given a good education. My dad deliberately put me into Catholic schools, because in our area they were the better education. The community schools weren't. In that time, the community schools were very much full of the Bangladeshi children, so it was, the schooling was focused a lot around Bangladeshi children, so they, you know, it was teaching them Bengali and teaching them EAL, whilst the Catholic schools were very much focused on your education. So, and he made that conscious decision to put me in there, and that has informed where I am now. And that's what I give back. You know, I know things. I know how to deal with it. I know how to support people, and I can do it for free. You know, it doesn't cost me anything. It costs me my time. But apart from that, it's a phone call, or it's a letter written, or it's just somebody bringing you a letter and you reading it, you know, and making them understand. You know, the translating, the interpreting, which is huge in our community, because even
it's
now,
massive. I remember when we were younger, we lived in Aston, and we'd have like the neighbours. So we were 5 girls, and neighbours, and then nearby, like family and friends who lived nearby would come with their letters, and I know we still see a lot of that.
yeah,
And
it's not changed really. And what's happened as well, historically you had a lot of interpreting services, or you'd go along to a doctor's and they'd provide you an interpreter, but because of costs, a lot of interpreting disappeared. You know, organisations weren't paying for interpreters, so they were relying on friends and family and children, and it's still now. And with the influx of people from European countries coming in as well, it's almost like it's so needed. And because I've got that privilege, you know, for me it's a given. You know, there's no two ways about it.
And one of the things that I just want to quickly touch on, because we are coming to the end of the show, is this, you know, let me just take a step back first. Your story that you shared, it really encapsulates what my show is all about. You know, you shared your story of courage, both from the confident side, like when you were doing your business, and also the vulnerability there, and then your story of courage in going into politics and really opening yourself up and to vulnerability. And as such, the people welcomed you with compassion, and they held that space of compassion for you, which now you've gone on to build connections. And I think this wholehearted way of living, it's also almost dissipated in our communities. You know, there was a time when you and I were younger and we were growing up, and we had that courage. People had the courage to come and ask for help. People had the courage to show their vulnerability, and people received that with compassion. And then we made connections and we supported each other. And that's kind of like, we've lost that along the way. And I'm hoping through the work that you set out to do, that we can start to restore that back into our community.
Yeah, what's happened over the last 12 years, and it's not a shock as to why it's happened over the last 12 years, is community segregated. We've divided, and we've almost become quite selfish in what we do, and because of that, our lives aren't better. You know, our lives, we are all suffering with something. So whether it's lack of food, whether it's lack of heating, whether it's lack of knowledge, or a lack of community has unity in it. There's a reason why we need community, and one of my focuses was, let's get community back. We've literally all gone into houses, and COVID played a huge part as well. We were forced to all sort of segregate as well, and all that. So community, because we are better. We're stronger in numbers. You know, the more we are together, we're stronger. And whether that's, to fight something that the government's doing, or whether it's to get something local into our area, whether it's to support a cause or something like that, we are better when there's more of us. Yeah. And we need to get that back, because that's what's happened. We've segregated. We've all become quite selfish as well, because we're so worried about ourselves. And COVID made us selfish. You know, I mean, if you remember at the beginning of COVID, my goodness, you know, the hoarding of toilet rolls and pasta disappearing. It was almost like, why do you need so much? What are you going to do with it? You know, sort of thing. And the selfishness kicked in, didn't it? Yeah. Historically, it would be like, oh my God, have my neighbours got enough? Have we got enough? You know, our parents grew up, we shared what we had, you know, but it didn't happen. It was almost like, I'm taking all the pasta and I'm taking all the toilet roll and that's it. But we need to bring that back, because life hasn't got better. I could understand if everybody actually improved, we all became richer, we all became happier. No, we're not. We're not happier. We're not richer. We're actually quite poor in all aspects, and we need to stop that, because this isn't a good way of living. So that's why, for me, part of my community work, a part of the journey that I'm on now, is getting communities, saying to people, you know what, we need to support, you know, love thy neighbour. And I keep coming back to that, because it's such a, it resonates with every religion,
and it's a common thread across all religions. Love thy neighbour. We have come to the end of the show. I want to thank you for coming on, and I want to wish Nazma all the best in her work with SuperNaz Socialist. Please do connect with her. Now, if anybody wants to connect with you and support the work that you're doing and engage with the work that you're doing and just follow you and learn more about you, quickly, where can they find you on social media?
Well, COVID did one good thing. COVID brought me onto Twitter, because I didn't have time before to go into Twitter, and we were obviously in lockdown. And Twitter is where I've made all my connections. I found you on Twitter. I found the political party on Twitter. I found all my early years content. Twitter has been absolutely amazing. So for me, I'm on Twitter, and I think my handle is as @Nazma for Aston, 4 with the number. My Instagram's the same as well. My Instagram, my Facebook, and my Twitter is all the same. I've kept it that because although there's no elections going on, I'm still in Aston. So it's Nazma with the number 4 and then Aston.
Brilliant. And whilst we're on the topic of social media, I hope you've really enjoyed our show. If you're watching us on YouTube, BEONTV UK, and you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe button, and also follow us on Instagram, Facebook on BEONTV UK. You have been watching the Wholehearted Living Show with Aamilah, and my show is all about bringing you stories and journeys about courage, compassion and connection. And from me, it's goodbye, Assalamu alaikum, and stay blessed.
BEONTV UK, for the community, by the community. www.beontvuk.com.
Are you looking for a new job? Want to develop new skills or gain some valuable experience and have lots of fun doing it? The Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games is looking to recruit a variety of roles, including catering, cleaning, stewarding and security. With roles from 3 weeks to 3 months, make Birmingham 2022 work for you. Register now to be part of the largest sporting and cultural event ever to take place in the West Midlands. Visit birminghamam2022.com/jobs.
বার্মিংহামের আশেপাশে কত মার্কেট আছে, ওরিয়েন্টাল সুপার মার্কেট সেরা সবার মাঝে। মাছ মাংস শাক সবজি সব তাজা ভাই, এর লাইগা তো বউয়ের রান্ধনে তো মজাই খায়। ওরিয়েন্টালে বাজার করে এত শান্তি পাই, হাকালুকি হাওরের মতো কারপার কাছে ভাই।
Oriental HALAL Store, Coventry Road, Small Heath, Birmingham.
আপনি কি আপনার রেস্টুরেন্টের জন্য কমার্শিয়াল কুকার, তন্দুরি, হট প্লেট, ওভেন এবং ক্যানোপির বিশ্বস্ত প্রতিষ্ঠান খুঁজছেন? আপনি কি এই সকল সামগ্রী ইউকে স্ট্যান্ডার্ড সার্ভিস সার্টিফিকেট CE সহ চান? তাহলে আর ভাবনা নেই। সুদীর্ঘ 20 বছর স্পেন, ইটালি এবং বাংলাদেশে সুনামের সাথে ব্যবসা করার পর এখন বার্মিংহামে খোলা হলো আমাদের শোরুম এবং ফ্যাক্টরি।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম। একটা ভালো রেস্টুরেন্ট এবং একটা ভালো ব্যবসার জন্য একটা ভালো কুকারের প্রয়োজন হয়। আলহামদুলিল্লাহ আমি অনেক দিন খোঁজাখুঁজির পর বার্মিংহাম কমার্শিয়াল কুকার যারা সিই অ্যাপ্রুভ তাদের কাছ থেকে আমি একটা কুকার কিনেছিলাম। কুকারটা অত্যন্ত ভালো এবং খুবই ভালো সার্ভিস দিচ্ছে এবং তাদের ব্যবসা প্রতিষ্ঠানের সার্ভিসটাও খুবই ভালো। আমি হ্যাপি এবং আমার কিচেনের স্টাফটাও হ্যাপি।
Birmingham Commercial Cooker Limited, Unit 69, Sydenham Road, B11 1DG, Birmingham. Phone number 0795 297 8136.
বার্মিংহামের আশেপাশে কত মার্কেট আছে, ওরিয়েন্টাল সুপার মার্কেট সেরা সবার মাঝে। মাছ মাংস শাক সবজি সব তাজা ভাই, এর লাইগা তো বউয়ের রান্ধনে তো মজাই খায়। ওরিয়েন্টালে বাজার করে এত শান্তি পাই, হাকালুকি হাওড়ের মতো কারপার কাছে ভাই।